Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Alisahkti. My registration number is A1M218121. In this video, I wanna explain about chapter 15 about assessment and grading. Okay, I will begin now. What is cooperative learning? Cooperative learning is not only a powerful set of instructional strategies, it is a powerful approach to assessment. Using cooperative learning enables us to easily perform ongoing, authentic assessment that accurately captures students' level of understanding across many dimensions. Effective assessment via cooperative learning. Cooperative learning and assessment. Tests and grades do give us an indication of how students are doing over time. But do they really help us do what's most important for us to do? Help students learn. Are grades the best tool we have to analyze how our students are doing and help them take the next step? Definitely not. For that, we have a powerful range of comparative learning assessment approaches. Dimensions of good assessment. Good assessment is first, formative, second, authentic, third, representative, and the last, multidimensional. Let's look at each of these dimensions, why they are important, and how comparative learning helps us improve assessment. Formative and summative assessment. The best way to understand formative assessment is to contrast it with its counterpart, summative assessment. Formative assessment is ongoing while learning is occurring. We perform observations and activities to monitor students' learning and the effectiveness of the teaching strategies. Are students getting the concept? If students are getting it, we can proceed. If they are not, perhaps we need to prolong practice or teach the concept another way. Formative assessment is process-oriented. The question here is what and how are students learning? Formative assessment and comparative learning. Cooperative learning facilitates formative assessment. As students interact with one another, the teacher can clearly hear and see students' thoughts, ideas, and even misconceptions. What usually occurs between the ears of the students is now outside the students' head and easy for the teacher to assess. This formative assessment process allows the teacher to adjust input, correct problems, identify gaps, and help students grasp the concept well before the problem is revealed with a test score when it's too late. Representative assessment. In the United States, we have a representative democracy. Citizens vote for the official who they think will best represent them. Involving every citizen in every decision and every aspect of governance would be impractical and unmanageable. Therefore, we have a proxy government. We elect politicians to act on our behalf. Representative assessment in the classroom is similar. It would be impractical and unmanageable to hear from every single student very single time. So teachers select students to respond as a representative sample for the class. Representative assessment and comparative learning. In a traditional classroom, the teacher presents something. Next, he checks for understanding by asking a question. We have another names for this behavior, display behavior. We call it display behavior because students are showing off to the teacher, to the class, and to themselves how smart they are. Often only the brightest or most motivated students raise their hands. The teacher calls on a student with his hair up and thus ends up hearing from a very unrepresentative sample of the class. This is more a form of self-deception than effective assessment technique. We fool ourselves into thinking we have taught our students well because a student has answered correctly. not focusing on the many students who did not raise their hands and did not know the answer. In a traditional class, we have the illusion there, for greater understanding than is actually the case. Authentic assessment. Proponents of authentic assessment criticize standardized tests, claiming they aren't true and measure of student learning. Instead, standard tests measure how well student test assessment to often get factual knowledge, recall, and recurrent. Can students pick the correct choice on a multiple choice test? Often they fail to capture higher level or thinking, including application and synthesis. Students may be able to remember isolated facts for the test, but can they really apply the learning to real-world challenge? Can they synthesize why they learn to solve problem and create product of value knowledge that cannot be applied has a practical values, authentic assessment, and comparative learning. Comparative learning provide an ideal context for authentic assessment. First, the product and performance of comparative learning are particularly well suited for authentic assessment. Assessment of students in comparative learning is completely contextual. It mirrors varied intercourse where students' full range of skill and knowledge are on display. Multidimensional assessment broadens what we assess. As an educational community, we are moving toward a greater understanding of and respect for individual difference, learning styles, teaching styles, multiple intelligence, and differentiated instruction all help break the notion that intelligence we as educators are become micro or that students are different, have different minds, come from different backgrounds and experience and learn differently. The world beyond the classroom value more than linguistic and logical skill and products. Learning tasks need to be varied to develop the various sense, intelligence, and learning and thinking style. Good assessments seek to understand students along these multiple dimensions. We more accurately understand what students know and what students can do if we assess them under varied teaching conditions. Okay, next, comparative learning assessment. Comparative learning adds a number of valuable assessment approaches to a teacher's repertoire. Comparative learning offers new and better ways to observe students during teamwork, monitor students, make adjustments during lessons, target individual students without putting them on the spot, and it offers structures for polling the entire class, every team, and every student. Tips for comparative learning assessment. Think time. After you ask a question, give students 3 until 5 seconds of silent think time. This gives reflective students time to formulate their answer. Write time. Give students a little time to each write their response before calling on a student to respond. Space to work. Easy access to approach teams and listen in is essential for good comparative learning assessment. Establish a sense of security. In comparative learning, students are frequently asked to share their ideas and answers with their teammates in the classroom. When to correct. If we think several teams need to hear the correction, we give the quiet signal and give the correction to the whole class. Teachable moments. While we are working the class and making assessment, we are still teachers simultaneous assessment. We know anytime we ask one student a question, we are creating a poor ratio of student in judgment and getting an unrepresentative sample. Differentiated instruction and multiple intelligence. As we assess students, we find that students are at different levels of understanding. Cooperative learning and grading. No groups grades. Here are a dozen reasons we are unique, focally opposite to group grades. 1. Group grades are not good for cooperative assessment. The first portion of this chapter was devoted to effective methods of cooperative assessment. 2. Group grades undermine motivation. Group grades undermine motivation at both ends of the achievement spectrum. 3. Group grades are not good for certifying students. If a student receives an in a regular class, she may be qualified to take an advanced placement or honors class. 4. Group grades are not good feedback. A defining characteristic of good feedback is that it is specific. 5. Group grades are a poor method of communication. If group grades are given and are partially a function of who that student happens to have as teammates, report cards are meaningless. 6. Group grades are not fair. Group grades are so blatantly unfair that on this basis alone they should never be used. 7. Group grades convey the wrong message. The grading practice we choose affect students' values. 8. Group grades violate individual accountability. When students know that they will be held individually accountable for their learning or performance, they are more likely to achieve more. 9. Group grades create resistance to cooperative learning. Many teachers attending my workshops relate how their own son or daughter has been victims by group grades. 10. Group grades evaluate the wrong entity. The unit of evaluation in education is the individual student, not the group. 11. Group grades miss the mark. The fundamental purpose of grading an individual is to evaluate the degree to which students have mastered content knowledge or have mastered skills. 12. Group grades could be challenged in court because grades are often the basis for scholarship and admission to college and universities. Any system that gives different grades to students whose achievement is comparable is not merely unfair, it should not hold up to legal scrutiny. I think enough for me. The last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.